Have you ever seen a person juggle 6 balls in the air at once? Well, long ago in a far country in Europe, there was a little man who could do this. He could throw hats and hoops and plates and knives, anything, up in the air, and the things he threw in the air kept going up and coming down, but they never touched the earth. He always caught them in time. When he came into a village, he spread out an old rug on the ground in the village square. On it he put his hats and hoops and plates and knives, and then he began his juggling act. Sometimes there was a show along with him, with singers and dancers, acrobats and clowns, and even a man with a tame bear. The people of the village enjoyed the show, but most of all, they loved the little juggler. Sometimes he threw things right at the crowd, and the people screamed. But the things he threw were boomerangs. They always came flying back to his hands, and he caught them, and nobody was hurt. Sometimes he did somersaults and cartwheels. But there was one trick he did that was the hardest of all and the most exciting. He would stand on his hands. The crowd would become very quiet. Then he would juggle the balls in the air with his feet. The crowd would begin to clap and shout and break into cheers. And when the show was over, they brought him food to eat and something to drink, and always some family said, "Won't you come home with us? We can give you a bed and shelter for the night." The next day he would go to the next village and do his show, and this was the way he lived and worked for many years. But the time came when he was old and weak. It was hard for him to go from one village to the other, especially in bad weather. And one cold winter day, a monk found him by the roadside, starving and almost frozen. It was near a monastery. The monk took him in his arms and carried him inside. The monks all took care of him. They warmed him and fed him until he was well again. Then the monks said, "You can stay here with us." "But what can I do?" he asked. "Oh, you can help us," they said. "You can help bake the bread." So now he had a home. He didn't have to wander on the roads from village to village or wonder where he would sleep the next night. In the chapel of the monastery was a statue of the Virgin Mary. It was the custom of the monks of the monastery to honor the Virgin at Christmas time. Every monk made a gift for her, and it was said that if someday a person would bring an especially wonderful gift, a sort of perfect gift, then the statue might even come to life. So for days and weeks and even months before Christmas, every monk worked on something. One monk made a beautiful stained glass window of many, many colors. Another monk wrote a poem. Another monk made a book of old writings and a special cover of leather and gold. Still another one carved a knight on horseback. Every monk brought his gift and put it at the foot of the statue in the chapel. In the days before Christmas, the juggler came to the chapel. He came at night when the monks were all sleeping. In the moonlight coming through the stained glass windows, the statue looked so quiet and so beautiful. He saw the gifts of the monks at the foot of the statue, and he wished that he could bring a special gift too. He felt ashamed because he didn't think he could do anything. He couldn't read, he couldn't write, he couldn't paint a picture or carve a statue or make a stained glass window. What should he do? What could he give? Then just 2 nights before Christmas, a monk was passing the chapel. He heard unusual sounds. He tiptoed to the window and looked in. By the light of the candles, he saw a strange sight. The little juggler had spread out his old rug in front of the statue, and he was juggling the balls 6 at a time. The plates and the knives, the hoops and the hats were all laid out on the rug. Then the juggler did a somersault, and then a cartwheel. The monk was horrified. Imagine doing this in the chapel, in front of Our Lady. He ran quickly to wake the other monks. He woke them. He told them what he'd seen. They came very angry and ready to punish the little juggler. But as they came nearer and nearer to the chapel, they became very quiet and walked on tiptoe in order to surprise him. But when they looked in, there on the floor in front of the statue, the little juggler was doing the best of all his tricks. He was standing on his hands and keeping all the balls in the air with his feet. The juggler didn't hear them. He didn't know they were there. But they were angry, and they muttered and mumbled and were just about to come in and scold him and take him away when something happened. The statue of the Virgin seemed to move, seemed to lean forward. She opened her lovely eyes and moved her hands, and she smiled. It seemed as if her lips said a blessing to the juggler. The monks looked at each other in astonishment. Why hadn't this happened before? With all the gifts they had brought and all their prayers, there'd been no such miracle. Why? Why now, with this simple man doing his foolish tricks, his cartwheels and somersaults and juggling? The monks were puzzled. As they walked quietly back to their cells, they began to try to understand what they'd seen. On Christmas morning, the abbot of the monastery spoke in the chapel to all the monks. He said, "Our Lady has been well pleased with the gifts from all of us. But most of all, she was pleased with a very simple gift, with the greatest gift, the gift of a full, warm heart, a heart full of devotion and love. And that's the kind of gift that can make a miracle."